Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Last night we told you that Israel was gearing up to attack Lebanon. Tonight we can tell you it has attacked not just Lebanon but also Iran. Israel carried out 2 strikes and killed senior leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas. It's a dramatic escalation. Israel's Western allies that until yesterday were urging restraint are now justifying the attacks. Hamas and Hezbollah have vowed revenge and Iran may have no choice but to retaliate. The world is waiting to see how, in what form, as West Asia plunges into more conflict and a wider war. We'll bring you the full story. In the US, Kamala Harris is ahead of Donald Trump in swing states. What does that mean? In Pakistan, Imran Khan now wants to talk to the army. It should be nominated for the Oscar of U-turns. In the UK, anti-Muslim riots have erupted over the death of 3 girls. And in India, more than 190 people dead in landslides in Kerala. We'll bring you a report. The headlines first. The US strikes Iraq, kills at least 4 people. Washington claims it was a defensive airstrike, says it was to deter drone attacks on US targets. Baghdad condemns the strike, calls it a heinous crime. This is the first strike by American forces in Iraq since February this year. Sudan's army chief evacuated after a deadly drone strike. General Abdel al-Burhan was visiting a military base when the attack took place. Last year, war broke out between Sudan's army and the paramilitary. Most of the capital, Khartoum, is now under the paramilitary's control. Myanmar's junta extends the state of emergency by 6 months. This once again delays polls that they had promised to hold. The junta is struggling to crush widespread armed opposition in Myanmar. The Southeast Asian nation has been in turmoil since the 2021 coup. Germany summons the Chinese ambassador. This is over a 2021 cyber attack. The West has been alarmed over cyber breaches by Beijing-backed groups. In March, lawmakers in the US and the UK were targeted by pro-China cyber groups. And the Bank of Japan raises its interest rate for the second time in 17 years. The move follows a hike in March that was the first since 2007. Over the past 2 years, the yen has plunged against the US dollar. Japan is the world's 4th largest economy. West Asia is on the brink of another war. The entire region is in chaos. In the last 24 hours, we have seen a dramatic escalation. Israel has struck 2 countries, Lebanon and Iran. Both strikes have been in the capital cities, Beirut in Lebanon and Tehran in Iran. In Beirut, a top Hezbollah commander is believed to have been killed. In Tehran, a top Hamas leader has been killed. Israel is said to be behind both these attacks. Needless to say, the situation is tense and precarious. We've been telling you about this. In fact, yesterday we discussed how an Israeli attack on Lebanon was imminent. And it happened within hours of our report. Israel struck Beirut in an act of revenge for what happened on Saturday. There was an attack in the Golan Heights on Saturday, reportedly by Hezbollah in Lebanon. 12 Israeli children died in that attack. So Israel was expected to strike back, and it did. But it's the operation in Tehran that has taken everyone by surprise. It was designed to take out this man, Ismail Haniyeh, the political chief of Hamas. Just hours before his death, he was with Iran's top leadership. In fact, he was in Tehran for the swearing in of the new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, the new president of Iran. So Haniyeh met President Pezeshkian. He also met the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and he was spotted at the Iranian parliament.
جمهوری اسلامی
It's a close association. Hamas, after all, is a proxy group of Iran. Its top leaders are protected by Tehran, so Haniyeh's killing means that Iranian defenses were compromised. A top Hamas leader was taken out on their watch, and that too in the heart of Tehran. Ismail Haniyeh should have been safe there. He ended up being killed. The details of the attacks are still sketchy. Here's what we know so far. This attack happened at 2 a.m. local time. It was an airstrike. Haniyeh was in northern Tehran. He was staying in government accommodation at a home built for Iranian veterans. And he wasn't alone. His bodyguard was with him. The airstrike killed both of them. Soon after the news broke, Haniyeh's daughter-in-law sent out this message from Gaza.
With hearts satisfied with God's judgment and destiny, I mourn a man whose name fills up the earth and sky upon being mentioned. May God reward us in our misfortune and grant us better situations. The pain is great.
Iran and Hamas have blamed Israel for his death. Officially, Israel is not claiming responsibility. They never have. Israel rarely takes responsibility for any operation behind enemy lines. But the reactions of Israeli leaders give it away. Several Israeli ministers have spoken about this assassination, and look at what they're saying. Haniyeh's death makes the world a little better. I'm quoting. Right way to clear the world from this filth. These are Israeli ministers. Yes, all your enemies will perish, O God. And finally, we have this. Careful what you wish for. Israeli citizens are also celebrating.
I think the assassination of Haniyeh is a great news, and I think it was supposed to happen, and I hope Sinwar will be next.
I think it's good news, both the assassination of Haniyeh and the assassination of the number 2 of Hezbollah yesterday. It's good news for Israel.
Israel says it has no new operations planned, but today's events change everything. Ismail Haniyeh was leading the Gaza ceasefire talks for Hamas. Those negotiations are now dead. More importantly, how would Iran respond to what has happened? It's a serious provocation for them. Their sovereignty has been breached. So the regime wants to respond in kind. Iran's supreme leader sent a warning to Israel today. The Iranian press relayed a message from him.
The criminal and terrorist Zionist regime with this action has prepared the ground for a harsh punishment for itself, and we consider it our duty to avenge the blood of him who was martyred in the land of Islamic Republic of Iran.
Iran says it will avenge Haniyeh's death. It will observe 3 days of national mourning. The funeral will be held in Tehran. Then Haniyeh's remains will be flown to Qatar, where he will be buried. There is outrage on the streets of Tehran. Supporters of the regime took out a march chanting death to Israel.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Akbar Israel! Akbar Israel! Allahu Akbar! Akbar America! Akbar America! Rahbar azade amadeim amad.
So the Iranians are angry. It will be very hard for the regime to let this go, and a lot will depend on their response. The region is bracing for impact. There's growing tension across the board, especially in the West Bank, where Palestinian groups have called a protest. Regional stakeholders are all nervous. World leaders are weighing in, starting with the United States here. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is still stressing on a ceasefire in Gaza.
Of course, I've seen the reports, and all I can tell you right now is I think nothing takes away from the importance of, as I said a moment ago, getting to the ceasefire.
Well, America could not sound more disconnected from reality. Meanwhile, China and Russia have condemned the Israeli operation.
It is clear that the organizers of this political assassination were aware of the dangerous consequences of this action for the entire region.
Qatar, Jordan and Lebanon have also slammed Israel, as have the Houthis in Yemen. Just like Hamas, the Houthis are also backed by Iran. Now, what remains to be seen is this. Will Tehran mobilize its proxies to respond, or will it attack Israel directly? Whatever they choose, West Asia is plunging into a wider conflict. Striking one enemy capital is risky enough, but Israel has struck two. Before hitting Tehran, they hit Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. Israel had blamed Hezbollah for an airstrike on Golan Heights, an attack that killed 12 children. So a response was always on the cards. The only question was the scale. Would Israel strike deep inside Lebanon, or would they target the border regions with Israel? Well, we have the answer. Beirut is as deep as it gets. The airstrike hit a southern suburb of the city, an area which Hezbollah controls. It's also a very populated part of the city of Beirut. Projectiles hit an apartment building in the area. Officials say it was located just a few meters from a major hospital. And it wasn't a random airstrike. It was a targeted attack on a top Hezbollah commander. His name is Fuad Shukur. Israel says he plotted the Golan attack.
Fuad Shukur was the right-hand man to Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's leader and his advisor in planning and directing attacks and operations. Fuad Shukur was the commander responsible for the Majd al-Shams massacre, in which 12 children were murdered after Hezbollah fired an Iranian Falak 1 rocket directly at a soccer field in northern Israel on Saturday evening.
Shukur's body has been found from the rubble. There was some confusion about his death earlier. At first, Hezbollah sources claimed that he had survived the strike, but now it looks like he did not. So Israel's operation was successful. But who exactly was this commander? Fuad Shukur was part of the Hezbollah's Jihad Council. It's the group's top military body. He was also in charge of their weapons, your precision rockets, anti-ship missiles, and long-range rockets. All of it was acquired by Fuad Shukur. He was also linked to a deadly attack in 1983. Terrorists had bombed US and French forces in Beirut back in 1983. Almost 300 soldiers were killed in that attack. The US says Shukur plotted it. So he was a key member in the Hezbollah hierarchy. And now he's dead. Israel's strike also killed 3 civilians. Among them were 2 children, a 10-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl. Just think about the irony. Israel's strike was all about avenging the death of 12 children, but in the process, they killed 2 more. That's what war is. It's not about getting justice. It's about inflicting pain. The question is, what will be the fallout of the strike? Israel says it's not keen to carry on. For them, this was a tit-for-tat attack. You hit us, we hit back. So now we are square.
The performance tonight in Beirut was focused, high quality, and limited. We don't want war, but we are preparing for all possibilities, and within that you have to prepare properly, and we will do our job at all levels above you.
We don't want war. That's the message from Israel, but Hezbollah will not see it that way. In public, they have denied carrying out the Golan attack. The Hezbollah have denied carrying out the attack in Israel. So for them, this is not a response. This is a provocation. Hezbollah leaders are lashing out at Israel. They say they are ready for war.
This confirms 2 things. 1, that this enemy demands war and we are up for it, God willing. We are up for it, God willing. And it confirms another thing, that we will continue as a country, people, resistance and battlefront against the Israeli enemy to take up our duties in full, to confront it and prevent it from achieving its goals through this attack.
The target is key here. Hezbollah knew that an attack was coming. So did Lebanese government officials. But they got the target wrong. Hezbollah thought Israel would hit their southern strongholds, maybe sites near the border, but Israel went deep. They targeted a top leader in the Lebanese capital. That's Israel's way of sending a message, sort of like saying, we can hit you anywhere. But is there appetite for more, for a wider war? Well, that depends on the Hezbollah now. Chances are they will respond to this attack. But again, it's a question of how. How will they respond? Will they stick to Israel's border regions or will they strike Israeli cities? They certainly have the capabilities. This year, Hezbollah released 3 drone videos of Israel. One shows the port of Haifa. The other shows Golan Heights, and the third shows the Ramat military base. It's located around 50 kilometers inside Israeli territory. Now, the point of these videos is quite simple: to showcase capability, to demonstrate that Hezbollah can get drones deep inside Israel. It can shoot strategic sites and then return safely. That was the idea behind these videos. But will they choose this risky option? Let's hope they don't. Most countries have urged both sides to de-escalate, and that includes Israel's ally, the US.
We do not want to see an escalation. We do not want to see an all-out war. It is important for the people of Israel. It is important for the Lebanese people to live in safety, to get back to their homes, and that's what we want to see.
Escalation or not, one thing is quite clear. New red lines have been drawn. Until this year, Iran and Israel only fought shadow wars. But now they're striking directly. Same with Israel and Hezbollah. Israel last struck Beirut in 2006. It was during the Israel-Hezbollah war, 2006. But October 7th changed the equation. In January this year, Israel took out a Hamas official in Beirut, and months later they have struck again. So war or not, Israel has just upped the stakes. How will today's events impact Gaza? More importantly, how will the death of Ismail Haniyeh impact Hamas? The group has issued a stern message to Israel. They've said that Haniyeh's death will not go unanswered. He was an important leader for them. Most Hamas leaders are obscure figures, but Ismail Haniyeh was not one of them. He was the political face of the group, also its main negotiator. Haniyeh was leading the Gaza ceasefire talks for Hamas. He was the one talking to Egypt and Qatar. They've both been mediators, Egypt and Qatar, between Israel and Hamas. And Ismail Haniyeh was their point of contact. And he remained at it despite personal losses in this war. Since October 7th, Haniyeh lost 3 of his sons and 4 of his grandchildren, yet he was seen as a moderate among hardliners in Hamas. Someone who could help end this war without compromising the core interests of Hamas. Haniyeh's death is a big blow to those efforts. People in Gaza already see this as the death of the ceasefire plan.
Haniyeh's assassination was a shock, especially since the man used to travel between Cairo and Doha, between Beirut in order to reach an exchange deal, exchange of the Israeli hostages and to end this war. His assassination will bring the negotiations and the exchange deal of hostages back to square one, to the start.
Qatar agrees with this assessment. The Qatari Prime Minister has said, and I'm quoting, "How can mediation succeed when one party assassinates the negotiator on the other side?" That statement explains how significant a figure Ismail Haniyeh was. He joined Hamas in the late 1980s during the first Intifada, the uprising against Israel and their occupation in Gaza and the West Bank. That was the first Intifada. During those years, Israel imprisoned Haniyeh several times. In 1992, he was exiled. He was sent to South Lebanon with other Hamas leaders. 1 year later, he returned to Gaza, and from there, he only rose up the ranks. In 2017, he became the head of the political wing of Hamas and shifted base to Qatar. In 2018, the United States declared him a global terrorist. But the key backers of Hamas relied on him, countries like Qatar and Iran, even Turkey. Take a look at this picture. That's Haniyeh sitting with Hakan Fidan, the foreign minister of Turkey. Fidan shared this image today to pay his tributes. So whoever replaces Ismail Haniyeh will have big shoes to fill. And who would that person be? Hamas says it has the bench strength and that Haniyeh's death will not weaken them as a group. But hasn't the war depleted their ranks? There are conflicting reports and claims about this, about the kind of losses that Hamas has suffered. Netanyahu says Israel has killed 14,000 Hamas fighters, but Hamas has challenged these numbers. It insists that it hasn't lost more than 6,000 men. The United States believes that the group can still deploy fighters if needed. Americans estimate that the Hamas still has 9,000 to 12,000 fighters. More importantly, Israel has failed to take out any high-value targets before Haniyeh in the recent past. Leaders like Yahya Sinwar are still around. This is the man who planned the October 7th attacks on Israel. The IDF has not got him yet. And Yahya Sinwar is being seen as a potential replacement for Ismail Haniyeh. One of the three names doing the rounds. The second one is Khalid Mashal. He's believed to be more moderate than Sinwar. And the third name is that of Zahir Jabarin, better known as the CEO of Hamas. He looks after a portfolio of companies. They deliver regular income to the group. And all of these three men have worked closely with Ismail Haniyeh. Now one of them could replace him. Now let's focus on Iran. Israel's enemy number one, the alleged orchestrator of everything that goes wrong in West Asia. This is what Israel and the West believe. Iran is the big brother of all anti-Israel forces, like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and every other armed group. Well, one of Iran's little brothers is now dead. Ismail Haniyeh was killed in the Iranian capital, where he was an honored guest. Let me show you those pictures from yesterday again. This is Haniyeh meeting with Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, just hours before he was sworn in. Haniyeh also met with Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Khamenei received him with a warm hug, like a dear friend. Then came Pezeshkian's inauguration. You can see Ismail Haniyeh seated in the front row, obviously a place of honor. The now former Hamas chief was seen mingling with the crowd, posing with a victory sign. Little did he know that this would be his last public photo op. Ismail Haniyeh died after the ceremony. He was assassinated this morning, like I told you, at about 2 a.m. local time in Tehran. This was confirmed by both Hamas and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Iran's new president put up this tribute. It's a picture of him raising up Haniyeh's victorious hand. Now he says he will have to carry Haniyeh on his shoulders and bury him. President Pezeshkian was seen as a moderate, is seen as a moderate. He was supposed to usher in a new Iran, a more conciliatory, a more agreeable Iran. But look at the post again. This is what it roughly translates to, and I'm quoting. The bond between the two proud nations of Iran and Palestine will be stronger than before, and the path of resistance and defense of the oppressed will be followed stronger than ever. The Islamic Republic of Iran will defend its territorial integrity and honor and make the terrorist invaders regret their cowardly action. That does not sound like a more moderate Iran. It sounds like a threat. Then there's Iran's other leader, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and he put out a series of posts in English too, so that they were sure to reach a global audience. This post says, the criminal, terrorist, Zionist regime martyred our dear guest in our territory and has caused our grief, but it has also prepared the ground for a severe punishment. And here's another one. Following this bitter, tragic event, which has taken place within the borders of the Islamic Republic, it is our duty to take revenge. Iran blames Israel for Haniyeh's assassination. Israel has not claimed responsibility, but that doesn't really matter. Iran is baying for blood now. And remember, it's not just about Ismail Haniyeh. Even if Israel proves that it did not kill him, there's still the matter of Lebanon. On Monday, Iran had issued a warning. Pezeshkian had said that any Israeli attack on Lebanon would have serious consequences. Attacks near the Israel-Lebanon border may not have mattered because this has become a regular affair. Iran was warning Israel against striking Lebanon's capital, Beirut. But Israel did it anyway and took credit for it. So within a few hours, Israel crosses the Beirut red line and an honored Iranian guest is assassinated in their capital. There is no way Tehran can let this go, which begs the question, how will they respond? Let's look at the last major provocation. On the 1st of April this year, Israel bombed an Iranian embassy. It was the Iranian embassy in Syria's capital, Damascus, an embassy compound. Israel killed 16 people, including members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. It was a direct Israeli strike on Iran, a first of its kind public strike. So it couldn't go unanswered. Iran could have chosen to go for an all-out war, but it did not. Instead, it launched hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel. That sounds bad, but look at the aftermath. 99% of those weapons were shot down by a combination of Israel, its Western allies, and even Jordan. They were easily countered because Israel's allies had prior warning. Iran reportedly notified a number of nations so that Israel had a chance to prepare itself. And why did Tehran do that? Because it did not really want an escalation. Iran had to respond to the embassy attack. It had to put on a show for its domestic audience, but it did not want to get dragged into an all-out war, so it announced its attack, thereby preventing an escalation. It was a smart move by the Iranians, and it showed great restraint. But will Tehran maintain that restraint now? Attacking an embassy in Syria is one thing. An assassination in Tehran is quite another. Ismail Haniyeh was killed hours after meeting Khamenei and Pezeshkian, Iran's topmost leaders, which sends a chilling message. It says that Iran's leadership is unsafe in their own capital. The Beirut strike also sends a message that Israel ignored Iran's warning, and it ignored the risk of an all-out war with Hezbollah. So it seems that Israel doesn't care if wider war breaks out. That's the message going out, and it seems to be goading Hezbollah and Iran. If Tehran lets this slide, it will lose face. The various Iranian proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they might lose faith in Tehran, so Iran is in a tricky position at this moment. Will it opt for a symbolic attack once again, or will it take real revenge? We'll find out soon enough. Israel is already at war in Gaza, and now it has opened more fronts. Does it have the bandwidth to fight Hezbollah? We've been asking this question all week because it's a critical question. You see, Hezbollah is not Hamas. It's a deadlier force, more experienced, better armed, and battle-hardened. In 2006, Israel and Hezbollah fought a deadly war. It went on for 34 days. Hundreds of people died. Both sides claimed victory. But the fact is, Israel did not manage to achieve its objectives. Its war machine faltered, and Hezbollah withstood everything that Israel threw at it. If another war breaks out, will this one be different? Here's our report.
It was the morning of July 12, 2006. Hezbollah launched a cross-border raid. They attacked an Israeli patrol, killed 3 soldiers, injured 2 more, and took 2 of them hostage. It took the Israeli army some time to figure out that 2 of its men were missing. But once they did, it was the spark that led to a deadly war. Ehud Olmert was Israel's prime minister back then. He called it an act of war. So Israel set out 3 objectives: destroy Hezbollah, rescue the 2 soldiers, and permanently stop rocket attacks on Israel. Thus began a month-long inconclusive conflict. Israel attacked Lebanon. Hezbollah hit back with rocket fire. 119 Israeli soldiers were killed. 43 civilians lost their lives. As for the Hezbollah, they lost around 500 fighters. In a month, both sides declared victory. But who won actually? Let's look at the aim of the war. Israel promised to destroy Hezbollah and release its soldiers. It achieved neither. Plus, there was a lot of scrutiny about its war strategy in the first place. So, judging by that, Israel lost and it was a win for Hezbollah. But it wasn't so black or white. Hezbollah may not have lost much, but it was Lebanon that paid the price. Over 1,000 civilians were killed, up to 1 million people were displaced. Almost all of Beirut's vital infrastructure was either damaged or destroyed. The bill for reconstruction was over $2 billion. That cast a shadow over Hezbollah's gains. But what it led to was mutual deterrence. Until recently, the border had been relatively quiet. That changed after October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel. There have been tensions at the northern border. The two sides have exchanged fire. There have been strikes, counterattacks, a lot of posturing, but no active conflict. And you can understand why. The Hezbollah is not the Hamas. Its military power is far superior. Their current arsenal includes at least 150,000 missiles and rockets. They also have ballistic missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, anti-tank and anti-ship missiles. During the 34-day war in 2006, the Hezbollah fired 4,000 rockets. That means nearly 117 rockets every day. This time it could be far more. Plus, they have trained fighters. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah says they have 100,000 men. Many of them have had combat experience during the Syrian war. Also, Hezbollah holds sway over large swathes of southern Lebanon. It has built multiple tunnels and hideouts there. In 2006, Hezbollah dealt with everything Israel threw at them, and they were still standing by the end of it. This time, Israel fears Hezbollah's response will be stronger. So the Hezbollah is no pushover. But will that be enough to deter Israel? Until now, both Israel and Hezbollah have held back from an all-out conflict. But the events of the last few days threaten to jeopardize this, and West Asia could now be looking at a repeat of the events of 2006.
Israel may be holding the gun, but the West is equally complicit. Whether it's applying weapons or giving endless political support, the question is, will that attitude continue? Or will they tighten the screw now? Well, don't hold your breath. The West has dusted out its usual statement. We support Israel's right to self-defense, but we don't want an escalation. This statement basically has two problems. One, it changes based on domestic compulsions. Just look at the United States. Washington has been piling pressure on Israel. They have been asking Prime Minister Netanyahu to exercise restraint, but each time he has ignored them. Normally, countries would be unhappy about this, the US especially. But in this case, the US is giving a free pass to Israel. Just consider the strike on Beirut. Before the strike, American officials warned against an escalation. After the strike, they endorsed it.
We also don't want to see the conflict escalate. We don't want to see it spread. That has been one of our goals from day one, from October 7th on.
Israel has a right to defend itself, and I unequivocally support Israel's right to remain secure and to defend the security of Israel. What we know in particular is it has the right to defend itself against a terrorist organization, which is exactly what Hezbollah is.
What explains this? Domestic politics. Jews make up around 2.4% of the US population, and they're an influential group. Since the 1930s, most of them have voted for Democrats, but that's slowly changing. Look at the 2020 election. Between 1/3 and 1/4 of all Jewish voters voted for Trump, which is why Kamala Harris is worried. She is locked in a dead heat against Trump, so Jewish vote could prove to be the difference. Hence the flip-flops. That's the first problem with Western policy. The second problem is the lack of intent. Yes, words carry weight in geopolitics, but you must enforce those words. Let's look at Germany. They're quite worried about the recent escalation. Berlin wants cool heads to prevail.
We call on all actors to use maximum restraint. The logic of reciprocal retaliatory acts is the wrong path, and what's most important now is to keep a cool head and to react with a cool head.
The same Germany is also arming Israel. Around 25% of Israel's defense imports come from Germany, the second highest after the US. And what kind of weapons are these? Submarines, warships, aircraft engines, and torpedoes. So look at the absurdity of all of it. First, Germany arms Israel to the teeth, then they ask Israel to keep calm. Do you know what's a better idea? Cut off the weapons. It's like that child who keeps drawing on the wall. You can either ask them to stop doing it, or you can take away the pencil. The West is sticking to the first option. They're not holding up weapons. They are simply asking Israel to de-escalate. And look where it's got us. More than 38,000 civilians are dead. Gaza is a wasteland. Even Tehran and Beirut are coming under attack. It's the definition of a failed policy. So what can the West do differently? Well, a lot depends on the US. Kamala Harris has an election to fight, so Joe Biden will not risk major policy changes. But afterwards, things could change. Just look at the UK. The Labour Party was once far left on Israel. They were quite critical of Netanyahu. But Keir Starmer struck a balance. He promised to continue the UK's support for Israel, as a result of which his party lost key Muslim seats as well. But look at his policy since. Earlier, the UK had challenged the bid to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. Keir Starmer has now decided to drop that challenge. He is also pausing the supply of some weapons to Israel. So clearly, elections flipped the switch here. The question is, which way will it flip in the US? Donald Trump has promised a pro-Israel policy, but Kamala Harris's position still remains ambiguous. So I guess the takeaway is quite clear here. Do not depend on the West to resolve your issues. They will make big claims, they will organize talk shops, add some weapons to the mix, but finally leave you worse than before. It's West Asia today. You wonder what's next. On June 27, Joe Biden was in Atlanta. It was for his debate with Donald Trump, and it did not go well. Biden stuttered, his voice was raspy, his words were inaudible. He made Trump look better, which sounds almost impossible, but it did happen. So all in all, it was a disastrous performance, the final nail in the coffin for his presidential campaign. Since then, a lot has happened. Biden dropped out of the race. He passed the torch to Kamala Harris. She is now the presumptive Democratic nominee. Yesterday, Kamala Harris returned to Atlanta. She was in the city for a rally, and it could not have been more different.
When the beat drops, we got to pick that thing up. Y'all ready?
There was music, even some dancing. Looks like the Democrats got their mojo back, and we can understand why. They have a younger candidate, a fresh boost of cash, and a chance to create history.
So the momentum in this race is shifting. And there are signs that Donald Trump is feeling it. You may have noticed. So last week, you may have seen, he pulled out of the debate in September he had previously agreed to.
Kamala Harris seems to be in high spirits, and why wouldn't she be? Look at this poll, a new poll. It looks at 7 battleground states. Kamala Harris is leading in 4 of them. In Michigan, she's up by 11%. In Arizona, Wisconsin and Nevada, it's a 2% lead. In Georgia, Harris and Trump are tied. In Pennsylvania, Trump has a 4% lead. In North Carolina, he's up by 2%. This new poll is a turning point. Until now, Donald Trump was leading in these states. He had the advantage, but Kamala Harris has now wiped those gains. She's closing the gap, at least according to polls, and the two look locked in a dead heat. Now, quick primer here. American states are typically blue or red. That means they either vote Democrat or Republican. Blue for Democrats, red for Republicans. It rarely changes. But then there are battleground states, also known as your swing states. They can vote either way. They swing. Whoever wins these states wins the White House. And Kamala Harris is conquering these swing states now. In fact, she's making nationwide gains. Here's another poll. 43% say that they will vote for Harris. 42% say that they support Donald Trump. So it's another lead for her, albeit slim. Remember, she joined the race just weeks ago and looks like her campaign is already working. She's tapping into the Gen Z, calling Trump weird and trying to rally America's minorities. But here's something we must add. Polls can often go wrong. Take 2016, for example. Hillary Clinton was in the lead, yet it was Donald Trump that won the election. Which brings us to the former US president. Until 3 weeks ago, Trump looked invincible. He was the younger candidate. He survived an assassination attempt. He was being crowned America's hero. How did he squander those gains? Well, maybe it was complacence. With Biden, Trump did not have to do much. He just had to stay quiet and wait for the US president to mess it up. He put Biden's health at the center of his campaign. But now he faces an entirely different candidate. A black female vice president who's almost 2 decades his junior.
Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say,
Trump's VP candidate J.D. Vance is telling donors that this is a setback for their campaign. So what is Trump's game plan now? It appears to be airtime. Donald Trump is going back to his showman roots. He's doing interviews and launching attack ads against his new opponent.
Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
This is America's border czar, and she's failed us. Under Harris, over 10 million illegally here. 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. Brutal migrant crimes. And ISIS now here.
Will this work? Immigration has been Kamala Harris's weak point. In the Biden administration, she was in charge of dealing with immigration from Central America. She failed. She couldn't stop border crossings. In fact, on her watch, they were at a record high. So the Republicans call her a failed border czar, but Kamala Harris is trying to flip that script.
as president, I will bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump killed, and I will sign it into law and show Donald Trump what real leadership looks like.
Harris has even launched a new ad campaign hitting back with the same message. So the US presidential race is heating up again. Right now, Kamala Harris has the momentum. Donald Trump is sharpening his attack. And both candidates are flooding the airwaves. With just 98 days to go, this could go either way. We're tracking it for you. Now let's turn our attention to the UK. A brutal stabbing has shaken the nation. 11 children and 2 adults were stabbed on Monday in the town of Southport in northwest England. 3 of the children died. They were young girls, 6, 7 and 9 years old. The attacker was a 17-year-old boy. His motives are not known yet, but we do have some information about him. The attacker grew up in Cardiff in Wales. His family had migrated there from Rwanda. They moved to Southport in 2013. That's all we know for a fact. But facts mean little in the age of social media. After the attack, some rumors started doing the rounds. Rumors about the suspect's religious identity. Some people from out of Southport decided to act on the rumors. Hundreds descended upon the town in mourning and unleashed violence at a mosque near the site of the stabbings. Here's our report.
A dance class workshop was underway on Monday morning in the seaside town of Southport in northwest England. About 25 children had signed up to participate in the Taylor Swift-themed workshop. But then, a knife-wielding attacker showed up.
My officers were called to reports of a stabbing at 11:47 this morning and at a address in Southport. When they arrived, they were shocked to find that multiple people, many of whom were children, had been subjected to a ferocious attack and had suffered serious injuries.
By the time the police reached the scene, 11 children and 2 adults had been stabbed. 2 young girls were already dead. 6-year-old B.B. King and 7-year-old Elsie Stancombe. At least 7 of the other children were in a critical condition. So were the 2 adults. The attacker was arrested.
A 17-year-old male from Banks in Lancashire, who is originally from Cardiff, has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, and is being taken to a police station where he will be interviewed by detectives.
9-year-old Alice da Silva Aguiar died in the hospital early Tuesday morning. The others are stable, but they aren't out of danger. Yesterday, the town was in mourning.
Something like this that has unfolded here yesterday is something that is what can only be described as a devastating nightmare.
Locals gathered to pay their respects. The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was also there.
I came here to pay my respects to the victims and families who are going through raw pain and grief that most of us can't imagine. I can't imagine as a dad myself. I think it touches a nerve with the whole country.
During the vigil, some outsiders entered Southport. The mob gathered outside a mosque close to the attack site, and they began rioting. The mob attacked the mosque and the police officers protecting it. They hurled bricks, bottles, and fireworks at the mosque and the police. They set cars on fire, including a police van. At least 50 police officers sustained injuries. The mosque was also damaged. But why did the rioters choose to attack a mosque? Apparently, some rumors were doing the rounds on social media, suggesting there was an Islamist angle to the stabbings. The British police have said that this is not true. The 17-year-old grew up in Cardiff. His family had migrated there from Rwanda. They moved to Southport in 2013. This is all the information that has been made public. But some people chose to believe the rumors instead. An organization called the English Defence League was allegedly involved in yesterday's riots. The group has been described as a bunch of far-right thugs. It is known for its Islamophobia. Starmer claims that they hijacked yesterday's vigil and insulted the grieving community of Southport. The Prime Minister has condemned the violence and promised that the rioters will feel the full force of the law.
Let's turn to Pakistan now. Imran Khan has agreed to talks with the army. About time, really. Toppled prime ministers do not do so well in Pakistan. They usually retire or flee. But Imran Khan chose a bold/foolish option. He chose to rebel, and that landed him in jail. But looks like the jail life is not suiting him, because Imran Khan now wants talks. Basically, he wants to negotiate his way out of this crisis. It's quite a turnaround. Imran Khan has blamed the army for everything wrong with Pakistan, but now he wants talks with that same army. The change of heart has been a gradual process. Last week, Imran Khan asked his sister to meet Army Chief Asim Munir. That possibly set the stage for this. He has also nominated a negotiator for him, Mahmood Khan Achakzai. He leads the opposition alliance in Pakistan, so Imran Khan wants him to represent his party. But is this offer genuine? Well, Imran Khan has set 3 conditions for the talks. And that should give you an idea. Condition number 1, return his party's stolen mandate. Condition number 2, release all detained party workers. And condition number 3, hold transparent elections. These are non-starters for the army. They rigged a whole election just to keep Imran Khan out of power. Would they undo all of that? Which is why the army has rejected the request. They say Imran Khan plotted to attack military offices, so no talks are possible. Pakistan's government has also rejected the offer. They're calling it a new conspiracy by Imran Khan. Now, all of this raises two questions. One, what made Imran Khan change his mind? And two, why is he making such outlandish demands? The first answer is quite straightforward, because he's running out of options. Imran Khan was betting on the recent elections. If the voting had been fair, he may have won it. But the army made sure that did not happen. So the election was a dead end. Then he bet on outside support. Imran Khan gave interviews to Western media. He wrote letters from jail. He even used an AI avatar to tell his story. At first it worked. He was portrayed as a persecuted messiah. But now the world has moved on. Plus, his legal troubles don't seem to end. There are more than 150 cases against him. It could take years or decades to sort out all of them. So Imran Khan knows his options are limited. Maybe that's why he wants talks. Now to the second question. Why make such outlandish demands? Perhaps to hide his desperation? Or maybe the time in jail has actually made him delusional. I'm afraid we can only speculate here. Having said that, this offer does carry political significance. After all, it is a U-turn. Imran Khan was firmly against talks with the army. Look at his statement from April. This is what he said. I will remain in jail if I have to for 9 more years, but I will never strike a deal with those who have enslaved my nation. Well, now he's proposing exactly that, a deal with the army. I must say his tactics are getting desperate. First, he wanted to become Chancellor of Oxford University. Now he wants to sit down with the army. Looks like the dying flames of a revolution. And it reaffirms the only truth about Pakistan's army. You cannot count on them to win wars, but you can count on them to crush politicians. Our next story is from India, from the state of Kerala in the south. Torrential rains have lashed the state, particularly Kerala's Wayanad district. In the early hours of Tuesday, the rains led to a deadly landslide. It took place near a tea estate on some hills. It was around 1 a.m. The landslide engulfed the houses of the tea estate workers. Many were buried as they slept. A second landslide followed at about 4 a.m., leading to more deaths and destruction. Rescue efforts have been underway since. So far, more than 250 people have been declared dead. More than 200 are still missing. And there's a race against the clock to find survivors. Here's our report.
These are the visuals coming in from Wayanad. It's a district in the Indian state of Kerala known for its hills and tea estates, and for the Chaliyar River, which begins near this region. But those same hills and river have turned deadly. Kerala has been facing the monsoon for a few weeks now, but on Monday, the rains turned torrential. It battered the hills of Wayanad, loosening the soil. At about 1 a.m. on Tuesday, as the heavy rains continued, the ground gave way. A landslide took place in the hills. The flowing earth hit the village of Mundakai. It's home to a number of tea estate workers, many who lived in makeshift accommodation. Most of them were asleep as the landslide swept through their village, and many were buried alive.
My family was in Mundakai. They are all dead. They found 2 bodies, but they have yet to find the bodies of 6 to 7 other family members. I don't have a place to live now. I don't have the ability now to find work and build a home. So, I am sitting here distressed, wondering what to do next.
Some of the villagers were swept away. Many are still missing, and the authorities are having a hard time locating them.
Main issue is that some of the bodies, around 33 bodies were recovered from 25 kilometers away, that is nearby Nilambur. The incident happened here at Mundakai, and the body is recovered from 25 kilometers away.
But the horror didn't end there. At about 4 a.m., a second landslide occurred. It hit the town of Churalmala. It led to another round of casualties and more people being swept away. Reports say 250 people have died. More than 200 are still missing. Search and rescue operations have been underway since Tuesday morning. The Indian Army is leading these efforts. Some people have been airlifted out of the region, but progress has been hampered by the rain, which has not stopped. The Wayanad district is still under a red alert for heavy rain. Time is running out for survivors. especially those who may still be sealed under their houses because of the landslides. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says he is monitoring the situation. He has announced compensations for the victims. He promised 2 lakh rupees to the families of those killed and 50,000 rupees to the people injured. Meanwhile, opposition leader Rahul Gandhi plans to visit Wayanad tomorrow. The district is one of the 2 that elected him to India's lower house of parliament, the Lok Sabha. Later, he gave up the Wayanad seat. Meanwhile, a political blame game seems to have begun. India's Home Minister Amit Shah says that Kerala was given early warnings about the heavy rain. However, Kerala's Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has refuted Shah's claim. But while the situation in Wayanad remains volatile, all hands are needed on deck to save as many lives as possible.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Firefighters in Croatia battle multiple blazes as wildfires rage across the country after weeks of heat wave. Paris Olympics mascots sell like hotcakes across the country, and a security camera captures the moment a tornado flips a trailer in Tennessee. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 2012, swimmer Michael Phelps won his 19th Olympic medal to become the most decorated Olympian of all time. Phelps would finish his career with a total of 28 medals. 23 of them were gold. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.